Hey guys, thanks for joining us for this month's episode of Life and Leadership. Every month, we will release new content about the behind the scenes in our own lives and also talk about various leadership principles that we found to be beneficial in our life and ministry.
We're also excited to have the opportunity to talk to some of our good friends and fellow leaders during this segment of our podcast. This will help give us a wide range of perspectives from leaders that are doing incredible things in their own roles and contexts. Thanks for joining us.
We're excited for our second episode of Life and Leadership. Love talking last episode just about how we got here.
Yeah.
And it's been awesome to hear the different feedback of how we got here. And because, I think a lot of people, they see all that's going on and they see the Instagram version of ta-da, filter on, everything's amazing, right?
Filters,
Yeah,
yes.
I need a tan filter so I don't look so pale. But like when you hear the behind the scenes, when you hear how you started versus how you got here, it helps people, because I know a lot of times, when I was younger, even though we're both young, I remember, young just thinking like, how will I ever get there? And then all of a sudden you get there and then you look at these people that are just starting and, I think it's just encouraging for people to hear, okay, they didn't just, get there overnight. There's hard work. There's a lot of stuff, going on within that. But also, we have some big dreams. We feel like God has placed this vision before us,
Right.
But we're young. And, a lot of times, culture tells you, hey, you're not old enough. You've got to get a little bit older before you can really start doing things in this world. But I don't believe that. And I know that you don't believe
Right.
that. But that's something we've experienced in ministry, ever since we can remember. At least I know me. When I was in college at Mid-America, I began to be an intern with Pittsburgh Church of the Nazarene. And I think I was like 19 years old. And, I was a kid to them, right? And just like ever since I can remember in ministry, I was always the young person. And I know someone's listening to this, be like, okay, you're still really young. I know. But ever since I got in the ministry, that was kind of the narrative, for me. And I've had to learn how to navigate that my entire ministry life. And I know you're younger than me. And so that's, that's been there for you. What's that been like?
It's been good.
Yeah.
I feel like since I am younger than you, I feel like you've taken a lot more steps than I have because you were also called younger than I am now. You know what I mean? And so while I have done a lot of ministry, I'm sort of just now kind of starting to get in the rhythm of things, know?
Right. No, for sure.
So, but it's been good.
Yeah. I remember, when I took that position at Pittsburgh, and I was just, a couple years older than some of these students, right? And I remember when people found out I was a youth pastor, it was like this ongoing joke of like, okay, where's the actual youth pastor at? And, when we, from there, then once we planted the well, I remember one Sunday, there's a couple that like researched the church and heard about it, and they walked in and they found Selena and said, well, where's the pastor, right? Because they didn't think she could be a pastor.
Right.
And then she goes, well, there's another pastor, and showed me. And they're like, okay, where's the pastor?
Where's the real pastor?
There's no way, there's this woman and this kid, right? And I just remember getting that point. I'm like, if somebody calls me a kid one more time, I'm probably going to knock them out like right here. But like, I think God wants to do something being young.
Yeah.
I think that, there's a process of everything. I think there's development within age and around the hoops, going through the hoops and all that. But man, like God wants to use you where you're at, whether you're young or you're old. And, particularly like when you're young, I think he wants to use that youthfulness for many reasons. You see all throughout scripture about God using young people. Yes, you got to be humble. You've got to be willing to go through the hoops, but like, man, dare you to believe that God, here I am, send me.
Yeah, it can be an advantage sometimes being young.
Right.
Because sometimes people are used to listening to older people talk about certain topics. And especially in culture today, the topics that, me and you we're Christians. We believe this. Yeah. We believe in the Bible. And a lot of people our age, especially right now, just don't. And the fact that we're young and we're saying, no, we believe that this is what the Bible says, I think it could be a huge advantage.
And I think culture plays into that too. Like a lot of times people are like anti-culture or they're, all absorbed in culture. And I think there's a balance, man. I think like you don't want to conform to culture, but you do want to adapt to culture.
Yeah.
And I think like what you're saying, like even apparel, right?
Yeah.
Even like, things of that nature.
We like apparel.
Yeah, we do. Don't judge me, right? But like God can use that stuff where like you're saying, a lot of times people expect if you're older and you look this way, then, God can use you. And that's just not the case. However, there's got to be that humility factor. There's got to be that just where there's such a character development there where people see that you're young Because like, how many times have we seen, like when we go and, to an event, they see you're the worship leader, I'm the preacher, immediately there's this like, false narrative about it. Okay, they're going to be stuck up, yuppie.
For sure.
And I think you and I have experienced that. But like when they begin to see our hearts and that we're not know-it-alls, you can be hip, but you also got to be holy within that, right? I remember one pastor said,
holy and humble.
Right, sermon series right there,
Seriously.
But like, dude, like, because we know we have that, stigma already, I think being young, we got to fight against that more than anything.
For sure.
And I know, when I was a youth pastor, and I was just a youth pastor for a couple of years, but like they took a chance on me. I remember being at that board meeting and basically like, Dylan, like we're taking a chance here because, you're not, fully educated. You're not, you don't have all this experience and things of that nature, but man, God had called me and I had to, embrace that calling upon my life. And I think, for you being able to come to that point where it's like, listen, yes, I might be, young, I might be uneducated in what the world says you need to have, but like
I am about to start classes.
There you go. But like you're called, it's like, talk about that. Like, how did you get to that point where it's like, okay, I know I'm young, I'm a woman, right? But man, like I have a calling upon my life,
right?
And I've got to, obey God, not man or woman. So I mean, what's that process been like for you?
So this whole year that we've had of evangelism has helped tremendously. Especially because going into different bands and stuff, and it's amazing, and they'll let me like lead their band, and it's and you can tell people kind of have a weird connotation about it sometimes because they're like,
who are you?
They think I'm going to be stuck up, because they're like, oh well, it's just the pastor's wife, she wants to sing, and so I think that
cute little hipster girl,
So I think that I found that there's such a balance that humility has to be the number one, and kindness for sure.
Right.
It would be kind to them, but then you also have to be confident when you're young.
Right.
You can't come in there being scared and mousy and you know what I mean? Because especially like I'm supposed to be in charge of the band for that Sunday. Like I chose the songs, I'm gonna, you know what I mean? And so I have to be confident, but you got to be humble and kind. And I think kindness is definitely something that young people, especially in leading positions, need to be.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. Like there's that balance between both because once you're nice and all that, if you're not confident in that, people run over that so fast, and so, number one, being young, we have to know people, expect us to be stuck up, think we're full of ourselves. But then, okay, once they see that's not our heart, man, we're here to just to, not participate, but man, just really just like come alongside you guys and partner with you. But then there comes that point like, okay, God's called us to this, and us being evangelists, you're hiring us to come in.
Right.
And I remember you, one of our, early on events, like, I just remember the band just not treating you the best, just kind of, just saying, okay, what's this girl like?
They just were,
and I was like, I cannot wait till her first song. And because I'm like that, like proud husband, like, you're this little, petite thing, and then like the power angelic force comes out of your mouth when you sing, right? I remember that day, like they were kind of giving you a hard time, and then you just ripped it, and I'm like, what's up now? Like, you know what I'm saying? And just like, but then, I mean, within that, okay, your character's been set, you've been nice, but man, you embrace what God had you to do, and you sang in confidence. Then all of a sudden, people in that room knew.
Right.
Okay.
And it's not only singing in confidence and same thing about you preaching and stuff. It's that you can't debate anointing.
Right.
Like you can feel it. You know what I mean? So if God's really called you to this, people will notice because of the gift that he's given you.
It's true. And like, listen, our culture, and especially like, our generation has kind of, hurt ourselves because we've been, a little bit stuck up, and so I get that. Yeah. But then like once you truly embrace what God has called you to do, as you stated, like that anointing comes within you. But I think also favor, like, I heard one sermon, it's favor ain't fair, and it's like, Dylan, why did you get to do this? Right. You're this young. And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. When I got that youth pastor position, because it was so crazy for me to get it because I was so young. It was a large youth group, successful church. I remember one youth pastor coming up to me and he said, hey, Dylan, I'm so excited for you. I know you're going to do great things. But anytime they say but, it's coming. not gonna lie, it was really hard for me to see you get that job. And I mean, why is he getting that position? I've done this, I've done ministry for so long, and he hasn't even got to yet. But just went on this whole tangent. But he's like, hey, good luck. And I'm like, thanks, man. But like, I remember early on, I knew they were taking a chance on me. And so I had a holy chip on my shoulder, if you will. Not like arrogant, like, hey, this is it. But man,
you have to prove yourself.
I knew, man, listen, people were, looking at me. And so the way, my setup, being 19, 20 years old, somewhere around there, I was a part-time student, or I was a full-time student at Mid-America Nazarene University. And that was in Olathe, Kansas. I was driving 2 hours between Olathe and Pittsburgh, Kansas.
That's crazy.
And taking 18 hours in college. And so, that was a big deal for me. Yeah. And at the end of semester, of being that intern youth pastor, they offered me the full-time position. And what was awesome is I didn't hear this until later. They were in the board meeting and they're like, well, guys, we got to hire Dylan. Look what the youth group's done and all this. And I remember Pastor Kyle telling me, he was really advocating for me. And they're like, well, we said we were going to hire him here. Maybe he goes, look around.
Yeah.
Guys, you can't debate that.
Right.
And I don't say that in arrogance, but I say it in confidence of like, if God calls you to it, he's going to equip you to do it, right? And bring you through it. Look, I just added one right there.
I like it.
Right? But like, that's it, man. You've got to know what God's called you to do. And Mark Batterson says, pray like it depends on God and work like it depends on you, and I think like, ever since then to the well and to now, like, we've been in ministry, quite a long time now, like for quite a long time for us. But man, like, God wants to continue to use us when we're young, and continue to be a voice in this generation. And I think like you writing songs, and you lead in worship, when they see how young you are, but then how anointed you are, I think it inspires them, and I think it gives them like a breath of fresh air of knowing, okay, God's raising up people, but how have you dealt with that idea of like, comparison and then criticism, meaning, sometimes, you compare yourself. Well, I'm not as good as that person, or I'm not as, good as her, even though they have like 5 like platinum albums, and all that.
Yeah.
But so how do you do that? Like balance the, comparison of like you feel not good enough, or hey, I'm better than them, like fleshly speaking.
Right.
We've all done that.
Yeah.
But then also that, that idea of just knowing like God's called you to be you, and you got to, be you.
Yeah.
What's that been like for you?
I think especially like of course, like leading worship and stuff, you see all these bands and you know what I mean? They're crazy talented and you know what I mean? And stuff like that. And the Lord spoke this to me one day and it was just like stay in your lane. This is what I've called you to right now. Maybe it'll, maybe your reach will get higher or farther down the road, but right now, like this evangelism is what I've called you to do. These churches are what I've called you to do, and and just do the best you can in that lane. But then also learn and grow for when He does expand your reach. And I think that's kind of where I'm at with that. Because of course you compare yourself to people; it's hard not to. But there comes a point in time where I am a lot younger than a lot of those people, and they have a lot more experience. So I need to work my butt off, to try to get it as good as I can be. And then it's also just, stay in your lane for this time and do the best you can with where I've put you. And then if I put you somewhere else, do the best you can there,
It's good. We've heard it time and time again, do the next right thing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people see, the Instagram life and the music video or, the promo video or whatever it might be. And they're like, oh man, but it's the day-to-day grind too.
Yeah.
So you got the anointing, you got the favor. Man, it's prayer first. It's, being spirit-led. Don't do something just to do it. But once you know God's called you and He's equipped you and all the above, then it's up to you to get your butt in gear, and I'm tired of that, stigma within our generation. Oh, just lazy and things like that. Man, it's all about hard work too.
It is.
And it can't be the main thing, but it is a good thing for us to do. And I think, being married to you, that was cool. Watching you practice piano, day in and day out.
Yeah.
And sometimes
probably annoying.
No, just when I'm trying to listen to something. No,
you
did just learn the Office song. And that
the Office theme song.
That was impressive.
You told me to learn it. It was cool.
But like, I'm not gonna lie. Like when I watch you do it day in and day out, it's like for me working out, like reps. Like, well, I want to be like this, or I want to get to here. How do you do it, man? Reps.
The more you do it, the better you get.
Right. And just watching you do that. you didn't just wake up one day and just were so good, and granted, I know, we can always get better and all that, but I mean, listen, you've been affirmed through and through, not just by me, I know I'm biased, but you're anointed and appointed, right? But you've been at this since you were, 6 years old, like practicing piano, and
my
your
mom used to
force
me to do it, and I hated it. I know. I'm thankful now.
But you're looking at years and years and years of practice. Yeah. And I think a lot of times we want that blessing overnight. Mm-hmm. But man, God's a God of process. And I like to say, I've probably said it too much. That's the beauty of evangelism. You can say one thing at one church and go to the next, and it's new. No matter what, I can count on you laughing at my dumb jokes sometimes, right? Just because you get the revelation on Sunday doesn't mean that the breakthrough happens on Monday. Yeah, I love that. Or Tuesday or Wednesday, Thursday, right? Whatever. Sometimes it's a year. Sometimes it's 10 years, right? I pray to God it's not 10 years always, but sometimes, it is. Mm-hmm. And you've got to stay true to that, of knowing okay, God called me to this. Do I trust his timing? And I'm reading a book called Acres of Diamonds by Jensen Franklin. And I love it. I recommend it to anybody, or just looking for another book to read. But he talks about the power of where you're at, and to keep digging wells and keep digging. And I think my nature, and opposite of you, which you helped me with this so much, but my nature is I like change. Yeah. I like to go. I like to just keep on going. Mm-hmm. But man, there's something said about stability, right? Persistence of where you're at, and you don't like change, and so sure, there some negatives with me, but man, you've helped me so much with just, hey, be content, right? And I've struggled with that. I mean, we're not all perfect, we're all growing, and that's one of mine, of just being content where you're at. And within this book, man, he just begins to just reiterate this idea that if God has not called you to move, that means that he's doing something where you're at. And for us, we're young. God's using this ministry, and we're just a year old, but we've gotten other job opportunities, and it's been tempting. It's that looks good.
All the security that comes with it.
Yeah, it's established. You got the money, you got the people. And that's awesome, but man,
it would have been a good career move in the sense of,
Right. But man, there's something to building something from the ground up. Yeah. Let me say, because we live in this Shark Tank era, right? Where you watch Shark Tank, you're like, I'm going to find the next thing,
I don't have an idea yet, but when I do.
I'm not an entrepreneur. But within church planning, we did that, right? Mm-hmm. Plan it from the ground up. And now, this ministry from the ground up. And again, if you're doing it just to do it, and it's in your own flesh, it's going to fall. It's going to just blow up in your face and all that, but man, when God has called you to it, man, you've got to continue just to, man, just grind and just knowing listen, people didn't get to where they're at just overnight. Right. You look at the Bible, man, I mean, just time and time again of just, God, you're just waiting on God in the process. And I think with our generation being young, if it's not overnight, man, we're gone. Right. we want something else. And how many times have you seen, especially with worship, man, I don't know, I'm not a worship leader. I'm not good at singing, right? I do sing at home, right? Which is amazing.
Oh, yeah, it's really good.
But I've seen this with worship people. I'm not saying it's not just preacher, or that it's only that with worship people, but so many people have come and, God's called me, and I'm ready to do this and
they
this.
They are on fire.
Yeah. And then they just fade away.
They just disappear.
What's that about?
I don't know. It's because it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of, it's the practice time that nobody sees, and it's the choosing of the songs that nobody sees. And it's a lot of work. And some people, I love what you say, some people are sexy Steves and some people are steady Eddies. Right. And you kind of have to be a little bit of both for it to work, because the sexy Steves come in and they're like, oh yeah, I'm ready to do this now.
They're dynamic, they're gifted.
But they're not steady, and they don't want to put in the work every single day and be consistent with it. So then they're out,
That's good.
Then of course you got the steady Eddies which is what I can fight against. I have to, that, consistent day in and day out, but don't take the risks and don't put yourself out there and stuff like that. You kind of have to be both. Yeah.
No, it's good. But, and I think whoever listen to this, if I could tell them anything, it's, like Mark Batterson says, pray like it depends on God, work like it depends on you. Oh yeah. And I've quoted that time and time again, but it's been the reality in which I've lived in, and just listen, I believe God's a big God, and if God can do it in him and her, why not me or you? And if he could do it then, why not now? And, we have never wanted to put our name out there. Granted, Dylan and Madi, we have a sign right there with our initials, right?
Yeah.
But like, if you didn't know if you didn't know us and say, okay, what's this podcast about?
Right.
What's this ministry about? Why are they trying to build their name? But man, I would like to think our character has proven like, man, we're trying to build the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And we're young. And somebody might say, well, you need to wait, and just wait till you're a little bit older and then do this. I planted the church 23 with Selena.
Yeah.
And you're an intricate part of that. Now here we are, a few years later, we're doing this together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing though, because like you said, God, there's something unique about the youth.
There is.
And God wants to, he wants to empower young people. And we watch that with the well, empowering young people, right? But man, I think a lot of times you got to humble yourself and believe that, God's raising up the next person, right? I mean, with Saul, it was David, right? And then David and Solomon, and it goes all the way down. And there's jealousy involved. There's competition involved, but I think what true leadership is empowering the young people, but then also thanking, admiring, honoring those who went before you.
Absolutely.
Listen, evangelism, there would be no evangelism without those who went before us, right?
Yeah.
And so we're not those people who just, whatever, you're old. Man, some of my best friends are in their 40s, and 50s. And so not that that's old at all. Somebody hates me after that. But man, just knowing like, it's both. It's young and old. Like God wants to do that, and I'm just excited to see what he does, in you and in me and through this ministry.
Yeah.
And I think one day we'll look back and say, do you remember, what happened? But I think God, not just within our ministry in the church, man, I think young leaders all over, God's raising them up. I just saw some friends of mine planting a church yesterday. Announced yesterday they're planting a church.
Yeah.
Like there's this influx of young people embracing their call. And it's not young versus old, it's not hip versus traditional.
Right.
Dude, it's us embracing who we are, and just being true to who we are. And listen, being cool gets old real quick. They got the new trendy shoes and all. Listen, I love fashion. I love all that. But at the end of the day, man, are you all about Jesus and are you about winning souls?
Right.
And God created you to be you, not anyone else. And if you can just embrace that, even when you're young, not with an arrogant chip on your shoulder, but a holy chip on your shoulder.
Right.
Man, he can do immeasurably more, right? And so what would you say, like, before we transition and bring in Mark, like what would you say, like for you, just looking back at this past year, only this past year, lots happened.
A lot has happened.
We're in the unknown right now with the pandemic and all that. But like, what would you say is the biggest thing God's taught you in your youth, if you will, in this season? What do you think?
I just got to embrace it. I mean, age has been something I've struggled with forever, just because I've always wanted to be this old, and I've always wanted to get to this point in my life, and I've always wanted to just get out of high school. If I could just get out of high school, then things will be great. Or if I could just graduate from college, which didn't happen. But I was like, oh yeah, that'll be great and stuff. And it's just like,
it's going to happen now that you transition into a new college.
Yay. But yeah, you just got to embrace wherever God has you in the moment and embrace what he's called you to do at that time.
Yeah.
And just be okay with where you're at and quit looking forward. Just
your left and right. Yeah.
Exactly. You just got to like stay in your lane of what God's called you to do.
Well, we're excited to have my man, Mark Griffith, with us today on our Life and Leadership podcast. Mark and I are buds, man. We go to Chipotle a lot. We're pastor friends and all that. And excited that you're here, brother.
Hey, I appreciate y'all having me for real.
You.
Dude, we love you, man.
Yeah, honestly, it's an honor. Two special people, and I know this. I know a lot of this is in the foundational stages, but I'm really believing this is going to take off, and I'm glad I'm getting in early before y'all, really blow up.
Well, Craig Rochelle's next week.
That's
so
it. I believe it.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, dude, we appreciate you, and Maddie and I were talking about life and leadership, and so this podcast, we just had our first episode, and filming our second one right now, and our heart behind that is for us to share a thought, each time, and for Maddie and I to break it down, but then to bring in somebody who's real life experience doing it, whether that be past, present, and immediately we're like, Mark Griffith, man, that dude is anointed, talented, but man, more than anything, like, dude, you're humble. And that's been the greatest thing about you. I've seen a lot of sexy Steves, man. A lot of people look the part, do it, but man, their character's not there. And man, you've done that, and so we're thrilled to have you, man.
Yeah. I will say this before we start or anything. I'm so thankful for you and your friendship with Dylan, and I know that you guys meet quite often, and Dylan always just is so encouraged when he meets with you, and you know what I mean. And so that means a lot to me, just knowing that he has someone like you to go to and talk to.
I mean, Lord knows where I'd be without this guy, honestly. So a lot of times I'll talk about our mentorship, because I see you're a friend and you're a leader, but you're also a mentor in my life. And I always tell people, this is a guy who saw it in me when I didn't even see it in myself.
Yeah.
And we need those people in our life.
We
right?
do.
So
that's cool.
I'm excited to break that down, because it goes way back before Pastor Mark, right? Man, it was Mark who was in the back of
we're like
the
heathen
car.
Mark.
No. So I mean, history wise, so I used to date Mark's sister, and she talked about Mark, and he's got this calling upon his life, and I was like, okay, let's meet this guy. And I met him, and super cool dude. It wasn't arrogant. You were confident, and and I wasn't always a pastor. I come from that, and I saw Mark, and I didn't see an arrogant, cocky guy. I just saw a guy who was joy filled. But then as I began to talk to you, I'm like, this guy's running from his calling.
Yeah.
And your mom, behind your back, right? Yeah. But like praying for now, Dylan, you need to pray for Mark. Yeah. Mark's got a calling. I said, I know he does. But I remember being in the back of the car, or you were in the back of the car.
Yeah.
And I knew you love rap.
Yep.
And I just thought I would plant a seed, And so me and your sister in the front seat, and I start putting on Andy Mineo Christian rap, trying to get him acquainted with God's chosen people, rapping and
I think was it a Grand Cherokee? Is that what the car was?
Yeah, Grand Cherokee. Awesome. And I had 212 speakers in the back, And
I remember shaking and vibrating.
But man, I remember looking back and just him just being like, all right, this is all right, because I was a pastor, and what was that like? You knew I was a pastor, and I was around you.
Well, I think I knew that I was called when I was like 16, and I knew that I was running from ministry. Now, I don't know if I had a realistic idea of how far I had run, where I thought, man, I'm doing all right, But literally, when I was introduced to you and I saw you, we were the same age. Yeah. I knew that you had been out in the world and you knew what it was like. You weren't naive. I was like, man, if he can do it, maybe I could.
Yeah.
Like, he's really living this thing out. He's really making an impact. I'm like, he really loves the Lord. And I don't even know that I had seen it in someone who was, I want to be careful with that word relevant, but it was almost
you knew I wasn't a square.
Yeah. Like you weren't, it wasn't like you were homeschooled and brought up in Jesus school. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but you weren't this like, it was like, wait a minute, this kid is actually, he's in culture, but he's really living this out.
Right.
And for me, it was like, dude, I just hadn't seen it like that at that age.
That's cool, man.
Yeah. So.
I remember, one of the first things they said, Mark's a good rapper. I'm like, come on, dude. Like most people around these parts, got a YouTube channel that, just begin to rap, just aren't that good. Yeah. And then I heard Mark rap.
I gave it up for the ministry, man. I gave it up for the ministry.
Yeah, I love it, man.
I've never heard you rap.
Yeah. So
really?
You still got a little, can you spit a little bit here and there?
Yeah. I got some bars. I was talking with Abigail. I was like, man, what if they asked me to rap? She goes, if they do, I have the specific one that I want you to share.
Okay.
So keep in mind, so I started, while I was writing, this is kind of BC or like almost BC, so I'm not going to swear or anything like that on the podcast, but this was an unfinished song, quick little verse, but it was my wifey's favorite. So babe, this goes out to you.
I love it.
Yes.
So what's the meaning of life? I saw a dude post a status, felt inspired to write. After an inbox, I told him it's like, this world's full of dark, man, I promise there's light. So pray to God, man, this life is a walk. Don't do it alone, because everybody loved Miss Doubtfire, but Robin's found dead alone in his own home. Rest easy, you funny man, make them angels laugh like I did as a kid.
I love it.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah,
so
nice.
Why does she love that one so much, do you think?
I don't know, man. I don't know if it just tugged on those heartstrings or, I don't know. She just said that's the one that I like. One. So,
well, dude,
if
you guys want more, check YouTube. I love it. I think one's got 1,200 views or something. Shameless plug.
Little plug. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, you're going to go viral. But man, like, because you're not from around here. You're from, Rhode Island. You're going to talk about that. But like, honestly though, I mean, rap, that's part of culture. I mean, people love, God's using rap, 100%.
sure.
He's always used it since it's been around, but especially now, you're a pastor and you still love that. Whereas, a lot of people might try to act like, no, I don't like, rap, right? That's not me. Dude, you've embraced that.
Right.
So what's that about, man? And how do you think Rhode Island had an impact on that?
Yeah, man, that's good. I think for me individually, I think music was just a huge part of my life. I remember when me and Abigail first started dating. Now, I'm coming from the Northeast where I think in Time Magazine, maybe 2013, I think Providence, Rhode Island got voted for least biblically minded city. And I'm from Rhode Island.
Wow.
So where we come from, spiritually, it's a dark place. Yeah. So I think there was a lot of things that I was just naive about because I was just so immersed in a culture like that. So I remember me and Abigail first started talking, and I'm playing all this secular rap where you read it, the lyrics are far from God honoring, but I loved it. I loved the beat. I love the culture of it. I love the poetry. I always loved writing lyrics and all that. And I just, I've always had rhythm. I was a drummer. I played drums in the worship band and all that. So man, I just loved it. Started rapping with my friends in high school, and it was like a joke, but we ended up loving it. But then Abigail was like, how can you love Jesus and listen to some of this stuff, And I had to start reevaluating. And then, but I remember being in my basement, and you sent me NF's album, and that was right as I was kind of coming out of, a wandering season. And I remember listening to this to this guy and being like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this existed, And it was, so it's awesome to see those two be married where you can still, be a part of that culture.
I love it. We got the Breakfast Club Christian version going on right now with rap and all that. But I love it.
Yeah, we in a booth right now. Yeah.
But dude, I didn't really see firsthand that transformation because, after, your sister and I separated and all that, which all, great story how God's done all that. Yeah. All great friends and everything now. Yeah. But I saw it from afar. Yeah. All of a sudden Mark's posting about Jesus and all that. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. And I want to know that because I know little bits and pieces, but man, I don't know if I really know that whole surrender story because man, listen, you're an alpha male, you're confident, man. Sure. You played football at Evangel and all that stuff. Dude, what was that process of you surrendering to the Lord?
Yeah. Oh man. So, kind of like you said, I think my whole life, it was always Mark Griffith's story was always big man on campus, captain of the football team, homecoming king, just that was my story. So I don't know that I ever really had to work hard for anything. I think that I always felt like I had purpose because things just kind of came naturally and easy in relationships. And, I don't know if that was just favor or what. So I go to Evangel, man, I just want to play football and, you name it. It's like, the sports, the girls, the freshman who's like, new kid on the block, but I'm from the East Coast, so I dress a little different. And, I remember end up getting hurt in football. I'm doing terrible. My back hurts, so I'm missing a lot of class because it hurts to just walk around. End up getting terrible grades, right? And I come to winter break. My coach calls me. He's like, Mark, you got 3 or 4 Fs, man. He's like, what's going on? And literally it was like, man, I can't go back. I can't play. I'm just, what am I doing? I sat down at the table with my parents and, man, I began to weep and just said, man, I feel like a loser, And it was everything that I had put my identity in, found my significance in. Right. All of a sudden it's you guys know now, it's sand, but it's just dissolving away. So I go to OTC, just the community college down the road, and start selling cell phones at Verizon. And I now through this time, so I'm out of Evangel now. Me and Abigail have started dating, who's my wife now of almost 3 years. We got plugged into a life group, okay? And I think the second most important thing in this Christian walk, outside of saying yes to Jesus, is who we surround ourselves with. Yeah. So we got in this incredible community. They're sharpening me. I feel like, oh my gosh, some of that stone's falling off my heart, and I'm getting sensitive to what God's calling me to do, who He's calling me to be. And I'm sitting in this classroom at OTC. I don't know anyone. No one knows me. I'm just another average Joe sitting in the room, right? Yeah. Not big man on campus, maybe for the first time in my life. And I'm sitting there thinking, what gives me significance?
Good.
Why am I here?
Yeah.
Like, what's my purpose? And I'll never forget, I'm walking down the stairs, and this is actually, you come into this, but I walk down the stairs at OTC, and I'm wrestling with that, going to sell cell phones. I'm like, this is so far from what I thought my life would be. And the Holy Spirit puts in my heart, Mark, why did you come out here in the first place? And the whole reason I went to Evangel is because I thought, if I could get around Christian people, then I would just fall into ministry, and I would just be a great Christian guy.
Right.
So did you want that as a kid? Did you want to be in the ministry?
Well, I think that's, I was playing drums in the worship band at church from literally 7th grade till I graduated high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
About 16 years old, I read this book in my room called Making Ripples, read through the whole thing, and walked downstairs. And I didn't even really like to read. I walked downstairs. I said, Mom, I think I'm supposed to be a preacher. And this was all about, impacting people and making your mark. She's like, Mackie, thick Rhode Island accent. Mackie, I always knew you were called.
Right.
So right there, I knew, man, I was created to preach and tell people about Jesus, and that's really the only thing that this life is about for me. That was my personal conviction. But then on the other side, it was like, man, I knew what I had done. I had sin in my life. I was unqualified. I didn't know anything about the Bible. I barely read it. I was in church, but there was just no, I had no spiritual disciplines that had developed or anything like that. And I just said, man, I think that's what I'm supposed to do, but just didn't really know where to go. Like, I don't know. So come out to Evangel, and it's intimidating for me. I was the Jesus kid back home, but now here I am on a Christian campus, and I might be swearing a little bit here and there, and because I don't know, and people are looking at me, and all of a sudden I'm seen as like the party guy, and I'm like, whoa, this is so different. But that Northeast culture was so different than the Bible Belt.
Right.
So I knew, but then I got into this. I got around community, and you're starting to develop some of those spiritual disciplines. They're challenging you, calling things out in you, and I was starting to awaken that, maybe this is a possibility, maybe I could actually step into this. And they were encouraging me. And, so that was the whole reason I went to Evangel, though, because I was like, man, if I could just while I was in Rhode Island graduating high school, if I could just get out there and I could just get to the Christian school, I'll be good. But you guys know when your issues are internal, they follow you everywhere you go.
Yeah.
For sure.
So
it's like God ripped that rug out from underneath you
Yeah.
to show you, like you said, like what's left.
Yep.
When you're hurt, when you're not the big man on the football team,
Right.
what's left, and because I remember hearing about you beginning to, go to church, then get in the ministry, and you're preaching at some church and all that. Man, how did that come about?
Yeah. So I'm walking down the stairs at OTC. Holy Spirit puts in my heart, why did you come out here in the first place? I literally went home. My room was in the basement. You were the first person I texted because you were someone who was my age. I saw the things you were doing, and I said, that's what I want to be doing. And I said, if he can do it, if God can do it through him, he can do it through me.
Right.
I have no excuses. And I don't know if you remember this conversation. I said, hey, man, I want to do ministry. It was this like surrender moment for me. And I literally said to you, I said, dude, do I need to go? No pastors in my family, no background like that. I said, dude, what do I need to do? How do you even become a pastor? Right. And you said, man, you just need to pray. It was like, dude, that's not the answer I wanted. It's like, what do you mean? I just need to pray.
Right.
So that's what I did. I just started praying and I guess I was so used to that big man on campus title or whatever that I thought, okay, God, here I am. Now you can give me my big sexy ministry, Like now it's just gonna, get the thousands ready, And my mom comes into my room, I'm praying like 3 months, nothing's happening. I'm praying, maybe not 3 months, but she goes, hey, there's gonna be a couple little girls at the church. She's like, you want to preach to them? I'm like, sure. So I go preach to these 3 kids in Highlandville, Missouri, which is like, old country town, small town. Yeah. I go in on a Tuesday night. I preach to these 3 kids. Wow. And I'll do this while I wait for the ministry you're going to give me, like I'll just do this in the meantime because I got nothing else to do. So I go back the next Tuesday and there's like 4 kids. Go back the next Tuesday and there's like 8 kids. And all of a sudden it was like what I thought was just to hold me over into my ministry. God had put me in it right there.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that humility, because people know where you're at now, and we'll get to that. But God, I'll answer the call. I'm ready to be used. Here I go. I'm ready. Lord, send me. And we think this massive ministry. And then it's like, oh, out in the middle
Billy
of nowhere.
Graham visions,
three
With
kids,
3
right?
people. Yeah.
And not that it won't happen, but man, God's got a process. And Maddie and I were talking about that, earlier in this podcast of just like, man, just because God gives you the revelation on Sunday doesn't mean that the breakthrough comes on Monday.
That's right.
There's a process in that,
Yeah.
And you humbled yourself. And it's funny that you really got what you wanted originally at Evangel, meaning you were the big man, right? And football, popularity, then you're miserable,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then God got you, just broke you down.
Yeah.
It's like Jonah, just broke
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
down
That's
and
exactly
spit
what it
you
is.
out,
That's exactly what it is.
And what was that like? I mean, how did you come to that point in Highlandville? You had 3 kids, because a lot of people, just as I stated, they see where you're at now and they see who you are, and it's like, I want to be, that pastor. And then I didn't give you the answer you were looking for. Hey, pray. We don't want to hear that.
Right.
But dude, what was that? What did God teach you in your character-wise, character
Yeah.
development in that? Like, what did He teach you?
Yeah. I think whether I knew it was scripture or knew it was a biblical principle or not, what I learned was be faithful with what you're given.
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah, just be faithful with what you're given. And, I think about the parable of the talents, and everybody's given a measure and everyone's given a different amount, and you'll see that, man, it's not about how much you have. It's not about how big it is or how large it is. It's about what are you doing with what you got,
Right.
And I found, as I gave the little back to Him, and I was like, God, I'll just do this. Like, God, I'll just do this. And I remember starting to realize, oh, this is my ministry. This is turning into a ministry. And I'll tell you what, man, it was just like, I was so excited just to be a part of it, for me.
That's awesome.
But it was like, God, I'm going to give this everything I got.
Right.
And I did.
Yeah.
I gave it everything. I literally just.
Right. I mean, dream big, start small, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people wouldn't do that. 3 people out in the middle of nowhere, but you were faithful.
Yeah.
And listen, somebody asked me, like, are some pastors just called to lead little churches, and are some called to lead bigger churches? Listen, I'm not God. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're called to be faithful and fruitful too. But I do believe God calls certain people to shepherd certain places, right?
Yeah.
Within that, going back to the parable of talents, I watched you from afar, not close up, but just be faithful with this group. And we would talk every once in a while, and you give me an update. And it's funny, man, like your family started going to listen to you to preach on Wednesday nights, and then your friends, and then all this. And I knew it. I mean, I knew the calling was there, but I was going to see, will he go through the hoops?
Right.
Then there came this point in time where I just kind of felt the Lord stir up my heart of help Mark. It wasn't exactly like this, but it was help Mark see that this isn't the end of the story.
Right.
I just felt that.
Yeah.
And I have to be very careful of going into conversations with most people within that, because they're like, yeah, let's right now. Well, I'm ready. No, keep going. Don't quit your job and everything unless God tells you to do it. But man, I remember just specifically just talking to you about, don't remember the words, but just specifically telling you, like, listen, man, that's awesome where you're at, but dude, God's got big plans for you, man.
Yeah.
And it's not about building Mark's name. No, you're a steward. I mean, you're being faithful what God has given you. And look at how the character's been developed. The fruit is, now there. But man, get ready, essentially. And talk about how you began to transition from Highlandville to DC.
Yeah. So I think, and I didn't mention this, but the church I was going to out in Highlandville, on a Sunday where we were packed, had about 25 people, so tiny church. And this youth ministry grows to, some nights we got 65 people in the room.
Wow.
So I think me being a little naive at points, it felt like, wow,
This is it.
powerful.
Yeah.
There were powerful
was.
nights,
Yes,
and God did
absolutely.
incredible things.
Absolutely.
And it was about a year, I think. And I remember having a texting conversation with you again. I don't know if you remembered or not. And you said, dude, I've been watching to see if you'd hang with it. And you've been faithful. And for me, just, because I looked up to you and your words carried weight in my life, I remember thinking, yeah, he's right. We're really doing this.
Yeah.
So we have a conversation. You're like, hey, I want to link you up with another kid named Dylan. And we sat down, we had breakfast, and I knew the Lord. I knew, all right, God, you got me. I'm ready. I knew I wasn't going to be in Highlandville forever. I knew that starting it.
Right.
And I started to feel that stir. Okay, I think I want to go get developed. I want to go get, be a part of a church where they have some structure and some systems, and I can learn how to do that. And so I just put out some feelers. Dylan was a part of a church called Destiny Church, which is where we're at now. And He goes, dude, we're kind of looking for a new youth pastor down the road. I said, okay, well, if you think about it, let me know. Yeah. So all three of us get breakfast. He texts me after. He says, hey, do you want to have an interview?
Yeah.
Now, what's crazy is I'm going on a 21-day fast at this time, praying about, Lord, where are you calling us to be? What are you calling us to do? And in that 21 days, I met Dylan, had 2 or 3 interviews, and accepted the new youth pastor position at the Central Campus in Republic.
That's awesome.
All within that 21 days, and it was like, yeah, God, you're bringing us into a new season. Here we go.
Absolutely.
I remember when he says Dylan, it's Dylan, at Destiny Church. But I was playing, I was at the well, and God was just doing great things there, and I always knew that Mark wasn't. I always knew that God had a different plan for him, but deep down within, I'm like, gosh, I wish we could, be a part one day, but we just weren't at that position. And when I connected Mark with Dylan, rather than being bitter or anything like that, I was so, honestly, I can say, I was so excited. Yeah. It just because I'm like, that's where he needs to be, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah. Something you've always talked about and it's really made an impact on me, is just being kingdom minded, and man, that's something I love about both of you guys. It's when you guys were a part of the well and you were planting that, it was never just about the well and the well's agenda. You guys have always been the kingdom vision. It's much bigger than just my church or your church. Man, it's about the kingdom. Yeah. So,
what was that transition like? So you go from originally 3 people to 60 or some. Yeah. And then, dude, you inherited a youth position at this church where it's a growing church, a larger church. Yeah. Give people some context, and what was that like? Because what's funny is we always want the next thing, right? Sure. God, give me that position or give me more people. Yeah. Then you get it. Yeah. And then you're like,
a lot more work.
Oh crap. It's like, didn't know that, didn't expect this.
Yeah.
What was that transition like for you from going from there to there, and what did the Lord teach you within that?
Yeah. Well, I think my nature, I'm really, I can just confess, I'm not an ambitious person, in the nature of who I am. And that's something I've even talked with my wife about. I think I could be more ambitious. My thought was, I just want to do ministry. Yeah. I just want to tell people about Jesus. I wasn't looking it wasn't about size. It wasn't about production. I just wanted to tell people about Jesus. Right. And so when we took over the youth ministry, I think it was running about 190 kids. They had an after-school program. And here I am thinking, oh my gosh, I had my interview with the lead pastor. He said he hired me on the spot. And so we prayed about it. We decided we were going to do it. And I'm thinking, I don't know how to lead. This is a huge ministry. Right. So when and their youth pastor was hanging around, so he kind of walked me through that, that first year, and we did that for about 2.5 years. And we kept the youth ministry at about 150, but there was just a lot of growing pains and learning and just having grace with yourself.
But I'll tell you what, one thing that you learned, you said that they had an after-school program, and a lot of times you can really get a lot of kids, in your group and things like that, and a lot of people would not want to mess that up because it would impact their numbers. Yeah. Having after-school programs are amazing, but if you're not careful, you can lose control. Right. Sure. Where's the group? And I remember Mark sitting down and having some questions, of how to navigate that to make it more healthy, knowing that some of the decisions that he might make might even hinder the overall attendance, but he knew that was the direction that it needed to go. Yeah. Right. And I mean, dude, a lot of people wouldn't do that. Yeah. I mean, what was that? What was that about? How did you get to that place where you're saying, listen, I know that we need to do this, and it's going to be hard. It might impact the attendance, but we're going to do this for what's healthy rather than what's essentially sexy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, our youth group was just numbers wise was just jamming, like 190 kids, but our culture was so unhealthy because we were just open it up, just have them come in. Anyone can come in, and we were putting together this after school program, but didn't have a whole lot of structure and weren't really familiar with how to run it effectively and efficiently. Right. So behavior, and we only have a certain amount of leaders. Behavior's just kind of getting wild. There's fights happening, and then it's so close to the school they can just walk over after. So drugs are starting to come in a little bit here and there with different kids. And we had just a conversation, man. I'm thinking about the health of this ministry. I think for a season, we need to close the after school program, you know, to get it healthy and to pour into these kids and, you know, not make it so accessible so we can learn what we have to do to make it healthy. So yeah, that's exactly what we did, man. We sacrificed those numbers to say, hey, let's take some time, pull back.
Right.
Let's put some systems and structure in place to get this thing healthy again.
Right.
And then we ended up reopening it. My wife did an incredible job, you know, piecing out a structure for it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, I mean, I know that might sound like an odd question, but I've been around the block a time or two in ministry, and dude, I mean, just seeing that humility, and I had those questions and discussions with you, and for you, for that just to be your natural response, that spoke a lot about your character, you know?
Yeah.
And what's funny is, at the time, you probably didn't connect it, but I connect immediately your time at OTC with God humbling you to a decision like that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because I see a lot of people who can stir up something big. I remember I was at James River Leadership College, and James River Church connected with Evangel University. And the dean at the time, you know, Dr. Spence, the son, he was just a man of a man.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And I remember him telling me one time, he said, Dylan, he said, true leadership is not getting a big gathering. True leadership is even when you leave, that organization continues to be healthy.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, oh man, he's telling me this because he knows that I'm a good leader. Then I realized, oh, he knew I was dynamic. But it's like, listen, that's not good leadership, you know? And so when you did that, man, that spoke volumes to me, you know? And as Maddie said earlier, you know, Mark's been such a, you know, huge help to me, you know, not just like somebody to just talk leadership with, but man, like friendship wise, you know, and sometimes the ministry is lonely, you know, and they told me early on, the bigger your platform gets, the more isolated you become. I'm like, what are you talking about? That sounds, you know, selfish and all that. And then I realized, you know, it's not because you're full of yourself. It's just, you know, the more people follow you and the more, you know, the fewer people you have to talk life with and can be vulnerable with. And man, I remember just one point in time, just like I knew God laid it on my heart to have a vulnerable conversation with Mark of just like, man, just open up. And I'm like, but man, like, you know, I don't want him to look different. You know, like I've kind of been a leader for him, and God just told me like, it's not about that, man. It's about being true. You know, being a true leader is finding those people you can be vulnerable with and lead together. There's a time and place to share things and not share things. And I'm not talking about, you know, things just to, you know, can put you out of the ministry. I'm just saying, man, you got daily life stuff that you've got to learn to navigate with. And I remember we met over lunch. We have a lot of lunches together, you know, and
I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
I love them. I look forward to it.
And man, I just, you know, just began to talk to you and it just kind of, you know, lift some things off my heart. And I remember Mark going, like, okay, he's looking at me here, you know, and, you know, talk about that though, because a lot of people, you know, aren't familiar with seeing people who they've kind of looked up to or fellow leader get vulnerable. You know, what was that like for you? You know what I'm saying?
Honestly, maybe one of the most, in my spiritual journey, maybe one of the most impactful moments that I've had. Because again, I'm looking at Dylan and I'm thinking, this is like the dude I want to be. This is the dude like I'm looking up to. He's a role model in my life. Again, remember, like if he can do it, I can do it. And for me, it was also this moment where it was like, okay, Mark, you're not in the little leagues anymore, man.
Right.
He's like, it's time for you to really do ministry. When you came to me, and so there was multiple things happening in that conversation. One, it was like this call to rise up, and it's like, listen, man, like you're not a little baby leader anymore. It's time to really step into this and to own it. So, and I appreciate you giving me that. But dude, I think seeing your humility. You know, God's kingdom, it's like this upside down kingdom where it says, don't show your weakness, right? You're a leader. Don't show your weakness. Don't talk about struggles. Don't talk about insecurities or fears or whatever and just hide it and bury it. And dude, I remember we sat across each other at the price cutter sitting at the table and, you know, you're being vulnerable with me. And I think for me, it was so empowering to know, oh, this dude's at this level and he struggles with humanity too. And for me, it was like, oh, okay. And it's so weird because you think like maybe that'd give me an excuse to be okay with my shortcomings. And if anything, it helped set me free from my own too. Understanding that, oh, I'm not the only one who's broken. And look how God uses him despite his brokenness. All right, I need to step into it too.
I remember when I was a youth pastor, my mentor and still one of my best friends and mentors, Kyle Rogers, sat down and he just kind of opened up. I'm this 19-year-old or 20-year-old youth pastor. And he looks at me and just, like you said, just humanity, just, hey man, going through some stuff. And I was like, oh, you're looking at me right now.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I'm like, what's this dude want, to do with me? And dude, I remember though, that just spoke so much to me because I'm like, just like you're saying, if he can do it,
Right.
if he struggles with it, and so can I. And
Right.
it created that freeing opportunity for me to do that.
Right. And there's respect that comes with it too. Because
Respect.
two guys like you guys are alphas, you guys are the dynamic guys and stuff. And for guys with your personalities to sit across from the table with each other and just say, hey, this is what I'm going through.
Right.
It takes humility and you guys respect each other more.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you know kind of where you come from and stuff. And
It's real.
Yeah.
I love what you said. It's not, that doesn't give you permission. Okay, well, if he's that way, then I'm going to say, no,
Right.
it's as iron sharpens iron,
Right.
And it was funny is I've preached so much in the past, 6 years, but still Kyle, my former pastor is that guy who, I might have just as many reps as him, in 6 years, not overall.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's still that guy who God used as an intricate part of my life,
Right.
And what's awesome is, and this is what I want to really talk about, this idea of competitive, competition.
Yeah.
That's the one thing, Maddie just alluded to being alphas,
Yeah.
I don't wake up, I don't think you wake up, I'm an alpha today, right? But man,
personality wise though,
you notice that, okay, people follow you,
Yeah.
and you have influence. And
Yeah.
just like you, man, you were a leader for the bad. I was a leader for the bad,
Right.
And I realized, okay, leadership's actually a good thing. First of all, God created leadership.
Yeah.
Right.
And so how can I use that for the good? And so with
Right.
Mark, I remember clear as day when I saw you that day in the car for the first time, or at your house, and then in the car, I'm like, man, I see somebody. First of all, I didn't see him as potential. He'd be a great pastor one day. No. I saw him as just a child of God. I'm like, that dude needs Jesus. I don't care how cool you think you are. I don't
Right.
care how good looking you think you are.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. I've seen it, dude. It's fleeting. That
Right.
dude needs Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So number one, that. Number two, man, once you begin to understand your identity in Jesus, man, I knew that God wanted, for some reason, and I'm honored to play this part, just to invest and let this dude know, I've set you apart, I've called you, I've created you. And I think, me being able not to be intimidated by you
Right.
or feel competition,
Yeah.
it's allowed this relationship to thrive,
Yeah.
because a
Yeah.
lot of people, oh, Mark, he's talented, does CrossFit, right? He does this, his sister, the other sisters in the CrossFit.
He's a
rapper. He's a NF,
1,200
right?
views on YouTube. I mean,
If you haven't got that memo yet. But dude, it goes back to one of the best things my dad ever taught me. And it's a broken record. Maddie's heard me say this 50 million
100
times.
million times.
100 million, not 50 million.
be nice.
Right?
not to go.
But, my dad was a professional boxer,
Yep.
fought on HBO, ESPN and all that. Tough guy.
Yeah.
I saw where that led to. But man, one of the best things that he taught me was, Deej, as an early kid, I put my pants on just like they put their pants on. I might not be the toughest. I might not be this or this.
good.
But man, in boxing terms, they bleed like I bleed, right? And so my entire life, man, I just was like, okay, let's do that. And so I grew up on the north side of Springfield. I was poor, and I played football with, all black and African American, guys, and I was the only white kid, and I wasn't familiar with that, and I was a little timid. And they ended up being some of my best friends.
Yeah.
But man, I remember scared, oh gosh, I'm the only white kid out here. And then I just realized, as soon as I hit someone, okay, I can hit them too.
Right.
And you're probably thinking where is he going with that? But dude, once I got saved, God showed me, Dylan, just like you were a leader then, and how you had that mentality then, allow me to sanctify that, because there was some cockiness and arrogance in that, right? Egotistical. But now with humility, that can be a good thing.
Yeah.
And so when seeing you, I'm like, oh, dude, because here's what else. Man, I've watched people in my own life, in my Christian life, treat me with ill feelings
Right.
because of who I was. Listen, there's times where I needed to be more humble, I'm sure, things like that. But times where I knew, because I was the young guy, and Maddie and I talked about this earlier, where, rather than, having the stigma of, having a chip on my shoulder where I'm going to be arrogant. No, I'm going to be humble. I'm going to be supportive.
Yeah.
And a lot of people received me, but some didn't.
Right.
They just treated me like this, kid, he's just young and all this.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, I refuse to do that to people. I want to encourage people. And if I see somebody who's good or better at me at something, dude, rather than me getting all territorial, man, I'm going to invest in them, because if I can put my pants on, or if they put their pants on, I can put mine.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, man, with you, there was none of that. Because I saw the growth in you, but man, I knew what God could do in you. I knew it before you could,
Yeah.
And so now here we are. You went from the youth pastor at DC Destiny Church.
Yep.
Talk about the context of Destiny Church, the multi-site, and what your role is now.
Yeah. And before we close the book on that conversation, though, I think the most powerful thing was your humility. Was you to, because Dill, you've walked me through so many different seasons. It's almost like I'm a couple seasons behind you in terms of the ministry journey, where you were, I'm a campus pastor now, but you were planting a church, and it was like, so I come to you and you've given me tons of advice and constructive criticism and strategy and all that stuff. But I, till this day, I think the most impactful thing that you ever did for me was just have those humble conversations where you were willing to be like, I don't have it all figured out, man.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
man. Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that out
Yeah.
there.
No, I'm glad you did, man.
Yeah. So go ahead and re-ask me the question.
Yeah, just give the listeners just and Maddie even like just context of, okay, they see you as the campus pastor now, but okay, it goes back to not Hartville, what was it? Highlandville.
Yeah.
And then you became this youth pastor at Destiny Church.
Yeah.
But then not only did Dylan see the calling upon this guy's life, the head pastor saw that calling. And so how did that come about? How did that conversation come about of the role you're in now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember going home after a Wednesday. It was after about 2.5 years. And man, was just disgruntled in spirit. I think that's the most appropriate way to describe it. And I had a conversation with Abigail, and I said, if our lead pastors asked us tomorrow, do you want to continue leading this youth ministry? Would you do it? And I said, if we had that conversation, I'd have to say no, because I came home and it was like I felt my heart unplug from it. It wasn't that I didn't love the kids or love my leaders or didn't find the ministry purposeful and purpose-filled. It's tough to explain, but I felt my heart disconnect from it. And ironically enough, the next day I get called in to have a meeting with our executive pastors. And they start laying out, we want to split up high schoolers and junior high and putting this whole structure together. And he says, but Mark, literally looks me right in the eye. He goes, but I need to know that your heart's in this.
Wow.
And I'm like,
The next day.
Woo.
yeah, literally the next day.
It's crazy.
So I go, guys, I know I'm probably dropping a bomb on you right now. I said, but I got to be honest, my heart's in this. What I said word for word was, I don't even know if I like youth ministry, because that's right. Done. So, man, again, we prayed and fasted. Anytime we got to make a big decision, there was no other opportunities. I thought if I wasn't the youth pastor here, maybe I'm supposed to leave the church. Like maybe that's the option. So we just prayed and fasted. I basically told them, I don't want to do this without any other job or position or pastoral role to step into.
Yeah.
So we just prayed and fasted.
And that was for a little bit, right? I mean, you had that conversation and then you kind of had several days or weeks of that fasting period, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember price cutter, getting coffee, right?
Yeah.
That was our thing. But I remember meeting with him and, he just was giving me an update on everything. And at that point in time, you're thinking, okay, maybe it's not ministry.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to go back to school. And then for the first time in person, up close, I watched, Mark just be broken. Not in a bad way.
Yeah.
But he didn't know.
Yeah.
Lord, I did this and this. Why? And dude, I remember, man, he just, came to this point in this conversation of you were just like, man, I don't know. And I just remember there's a righteous anger, that builds up within you. And I wasn't, angry at you, but I saw, like, I was hearing everything that was taking place. I'm like, dude, God's not done with this guy. He is not done. Yeah. And I don't even remember the details of that conversation.
Well, I remember it. I'm honestly fired. I'm fired up to talk about it because, and you're right. So we're stepping out into the abyss, and I don't know anything. I'm like, am I even supposed to do ministry? Am I even called to do this? Having all those questions, and maybe this was it. Maybe I took the wrong path. Man, I'm not, well educated or whatever. I'm like, and what am I going to go do? Like, what am I going to go do now? There's no job for me.
Good rap.
So again, could rap. I'll finally admit the career wasn't planning, turning out the way I expected it to. So.
Oh man.
But I'm thinking, again, one of these moments of what now? Got it. You even calling me like, I don't know. So they asked us to stay for 3 months and we met and I'm talking through with you. And really, I don't even know if I even understood. I think I kind of buried some of those feelings, and I'm just trying to take it day by day and figure out what we're going to do next. And all of a sudden, Dylan just starts speaking over me with authority. And he goes, I think about this video I saw of T.D. Jakes coming up to John Gray, and he lays his hands on John Gray, and he goes, I cast that spirit of suicide off of you. And I didn't have suicidal thoughts, but man, I get like weepy even thinking about it, because gosh, where are these tears coming from? But it was in that moment where I needed someone. I needed someone to fight for me.
Yeah.
I needed someone, and it was like, and I didn't have that. And he was just like, it was almost like, in the spirit, he was just punching the devil who was just punching me,
right?
Like he stuck up for me, and I walked away rejuvenated, like, let's go. I'm not done,
right?
So
awesome.
Find the good fight.
Yeah, yeah. It was honestly, and literally, I had to throw my face into my sweatshirt because I'm crying in this price cutter, and I can't stop crying. It was powerful, man.
Well, I know I'm interrupting you, and I want you to finish, but you said you felt like no one was in your corner, and I think that's imperative for people to hear. People are like, oh, I wish I was Mark.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so anointed. He's so talented. Listen, what did I say? Leadership, man. The higher your level gets, the more followers, the more isolated you get.
Right.
And a lot of times people refrain from encouragement to people like you because
they don't think you need it.
you're thinking
Right.
it's lies straight from the pit of hell.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to insert that because maybe someone listening, oh, Mark's got it all figured out. No, he's human just as we're human.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate you sharing that.
And I don't know if you guys have experienced this, because Maddie, you've gone to full-time ministry now, and you have your worship ministry, and you have done different ministries. But all these people encourage you to do it, and you have friends and relatives. Everyone's, you'd be great at it. Step into it. Be a worship leader. Be a pastor. And then you get there, and no one's there.
Right.
They don't come watch you sing. They don't come watch you preach.
Right.
They don't send you messages. They don't encourage you. And you think, and I remember having this moment, and maybe you guys had a similar moment where you go, man, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it because I love Jesus, and he's called me to do it, not for the pat on the back and the applause.
Right, because a lot of times you're not going to get it.
You're not going to get it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're talking about leading in our youth. Do you think being young has something to do with that? With people not being in the corner? Or at least they are originally,
absolutely.
But not
Absolutely. I think it has, absolutely. In 100%, I think it has, it only contributes to them saying, dude, 100%.
Yeah.
I think 100%.
And so how old are you now?
26.
So you're 26, okay?
It's not very often I throw that out there. And I will. And obviously, if people ask me, it's funny. People in my church, when they get me alone, like that question
So
always
how old
comes
are-
up.
Yeah.
But I had another sort of
Never goes
mentor
away.
figure. Yeah, I had another sort of mentor figure in my life. He said, "Mark, listen." He goes, "You don't need to talk about your age." He goes, "And if you do," he said, it's probably gonna end up coming out as false humility anyways.
Right.
He goes, someone saw it in you. Someone saw it in you and believed it in you. He goes, and God saw it in you. And he goes, so you don't need to talk about your age.
Right.
Don't use it as a crutch.
Right.
Good.
So I've committed to really just not talking about it.
Right. And just letting everything else take care of itself.
That's it.
But people are in the back of their mind for first guess, like, how old is this guy, right?
Yeah. People always ask us when we're
Always.
in evangelism and stuff, you come
Yeah.
to this church and they're like, so,
Right.
yeah.
What I love, and we're bros, right? We're on the podcast, but we're buds, right? And so we can have those people, we can have those, unhumble conversations. But I was bragging on Madi earlier, just because people who don't know her at first will come in and they think she's gonna be a brat. Just I don't know why.
Sure.
I give
Not
off a
always,
brat.
but sometimes
I don't know.
No, she's the
I don't
sweetest girl.
catch
People
those vibes.
always
No,
think
I don't
that
catch those
though.
vibes.
But I think
before-
it comes out of a place of insecurity from others, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, we hired her to come in and sing. And then once they see she's sweet, they're like, okay, I'm warming up to her. And then she just,
Then they think I'm going to suck
no, then,
if I'm
yeah.
sweet.
And then she just, belts up. I'm like, what up, right?
Yeah.
And
Me
so-
and Abigail love your voice, man.
Oh, thank
anytime,
you.
like if she's playing a video on her phone or something, I can just, you just have this unique tone, and I can always tell when it's you.
Oh, man.
You got to roar
Yeah.
you're like a lioness when it comes to leading worship. So
Man.
You've always been so encouraging. Let me just throw
Yeah.
that out there. Seriously,
Yeah.
seriously, you've been so nice to me and just from the beginning, just encouraged me. And that's always meant
you're
so much
easy-
to me.
You're easy to encourage. So
ADD moment where you're talking about roaring.
Yeah.
Maddie had on a leopard print shirt.
Oh
and
my
we started calling her
goodness.
Tiger Queen earlier. Anyway, life and leadership,
I don't know
though,
what
right?
that show is.
Exactly, life and
I
leadership.
know
We'll
nothing
edit
about that
out.
show.
But man, I felt so proud of her, when she would sing like that. And with me, they would look at me like, "Who is this?" And somebody always never fails.
Right.
Sit there in the front row. Then by the end of it,
Judging your
They
skinny
got
jeans.
tears.
never fails. Like
Yeah.
they come up, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm not like, I told you. But it's like, listen, if I can be an example for you not to judge people, awesome, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And with you, I love it, man. Just from afar watching God do that. But when I'm there, any chance I can, I come and listen to you preach. I'm just like,
that's awesome.
Man, that's my dude. Like, so proud of you, you know, man, because you just tore it up. And so, now you're in Marshfield.
Yep.
You're you're campus pastor of Destiny Church. You were the youth pastor. Now you're the campus pastor.
Yeah.
I'm from Marshfield. Maddie's from Marshfield. Now we all live in Marshfield. It's awesome, dude. Here we are.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Yes.
But dude, like, I got to be honest. Like, many years ago, I'm like, man, I would love to be able to, preach or lead in my hometown. That'd be great.
Yeah.
But then God's allowed me to go out, other places.
Yeah.
And now Mark Griffith is in Marshfield, Missouri. And dude, I'm telling you, I could not pick a better person to reach this community. Now, not on paper, because on paper, hipster guy, like all that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But dude,
Very
think
unqualified.
Okay, earlier I talked about hip and holy. He was the one that that brought that up.
Yeah,
hip and holy, right?
hip and
But
holy.
dude, Mark's hip and holy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And dude, I knew our community needed that, right? And so I want you to talk about the context of a church that you're leading.
Yeah.
What was that like going from the youth pastor to the pastor? Because you took over a position that was previously there. Dude, what's that been like? Just overall.
Yeah. So, kind of the demographic of the church or whatever, I understand that we're kind of coming into a town. It's a farm town for the most part. So it's kind of, I'm almost confused. Like, God, are you calling us? Are you calling us out there? And I'll rewind. So we get, we're coming to the end of youth ministry. What are we going to do? We go on a 21-day fast. And on that fast, man, fasting is amazing. I know you guys got testimonies too.
Yeah.
But our lead pastor comes up, and I didn't even, the Marshfield campus pastor, he decided to step down. So he comes up to my office, which, it just wasn't common for him to do. He sits down on the couch in my office and just starts talking with me. He goes, yeah, we're kind of looking. I had heard rumors they were thinking about bringing somebody in for that spot. And I'm not even thinking, put me there. It's just not even a thought in my brain. So I go, oh, I heard you're talking about bringing so-and-so in. I said, that's awesome. I've heard great things about him. I know people love him. And he goes, yeah. He goes, but you know what I really want? I want you and Abigail out there. And I'm like, okay. So we go out for a couple Sundays and we watch. And the first Sunday we knew, we fell in love with the place. And we fell in love with the people. And we feel, but are we a fit? Like culturally, are we a fit? Does this make sense? And it really didn't make sense. But we said, we knew that that's where God was calling us to be. And it was in our heart. And we were like, all right, like, let's do it. So we came out and, I remember meeting the leaders, and literally I've had conversations with people who are in our church now, and they said, dude, I have to be honest. So Pastor Chad is our lead pastor. They've literally, admitted to me, they go, when we found out that we were getting a 25-year-old kid as our lead pastor, he goes, I sent a not very nice text message to Pastor Chad. And that was multiple people. I've had that conversation of, what are they doing bringing a kid in here?
Yeah. I'm so glad it's not just me. I love it, man. I love hearing this side of it now.
But guys, I got to be honest with you. God had proven himself faithful in every season, and not arrogant, not cocky, but I knew, God, you've put this in me. This is what I was created to do.
Right.
And I was coming out, when you fought for me, in that moment coming out with, I had this sense that I'm going to come out here and I'm going to bring Jesus. God, I'm just going to submit to what you want to do, but I've seen how you used Abigail and I in the past. And if it's going to be anything like that, I know you're going to do it again. So we came out ready to, come on, let's go to war.
That's awesome.
And we had conversations where say, hey, this is going to be tough. People are probably going to leave. I said, we might lose people before we grow as a church because we're young and they're that first impression or whatever. So we just came in and, man, we threw ourselves at it. We threw ourselves at it. So
what was that like, those first few months, you just beginning to, that's a whole new ball. That's a whole new, another monster. You go from youth ministry to this. And you guys are running how many people now?
Yeah.
All right.
I would say normally like maybe 450 on average. The highest attendance we've had is about 525, I think. And so on a day we did baby dedications.
Right.
So.
Everyone comes to baby dedications.
Grandpa. Yeah. Right. But man, like, the church has grown since you've been there. Like that's what I'm getting. Is and I say that because you're a humble guy. You're not going to talk about that, but
sure.
I want to say that because listen, God's using you while you're young, and that's why you're here, man.
Yeah.
Leading when you're young, and 1 Timothy 4:12, we know it, right?
Yeah.
Don't allow anybody to look down upon us because we're young, right? But instead, be an example. Here's the deal: there's a lot of people that are doing it wrong.
Yeah.
They have a chip on their shoulder and they're arrogant, cocky, say I'm young and all this.
That false humility.
That cool bull crap
Yeah.
is ridiculous,
Yeah.
right? And people see you, okay, sexy Steve,
Yeah.
but then they see Steady Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
And then like people buy into that. What's hilarious, I wish everybody knew this context because a bunch of country people,
Yeah.
not just country, I mean like a wide variety
Yeah.
of people,
Yeah.
but
And as we got here, it's far less country than I
Right.
think our first impression.
right.
Yes.
Well, from Rhode Island, it's pretty country, right?
Everything's country compared to that.
But there are country people in there, right?
Yeah.
And what's amazing is watching these guys just rave about Mark. And because like I feel like this proud, like I guess you'd say brother because I'm like the same age as him, right? But like I was at the lumberyard, Maddie's parents own the lumberyard. And so at lunchtime, everybody goes and eats,
Yeah.
And so just a few weeks ago, I was there and there's an old country boy, who I've known for a while. And he's just on fire for Jesus now.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing, God just use you to reach all these guys and girls. And he goes, we just couldn't ask for anybody better.
Wow.
And I
Yeah.
just smiling because I'm like, that's my dude. I'm just like, yes. And I'm so proud of him.
Yeah.
And just knowing how God put this burden of my hometown in my heart. But then it doesn't mean that's always us. My role was to listen. Oh, that's good. Like, it's like years ago, I didn't know.
Right.
But man, God knew,
Yeah.
and here you are. And God probably tested my character early on. Are you going to invest in somebody?
Right. Yeah.
Right. What if I send him to your hometown? Right.
Yeah.
Dude, it's not about territorialism. It's like, heck yeah. Because man, if God can use him here, how amazing
Right.
is that? And so just to hear the way that, man, these grown men, man, these men of men have just bought into it,
Yeah.
but you had to go through the ringer.
Yeah.
And to get that confidence,
Yeah.
because if you would have went, before without really getting humbled and things like that, I think you would have just came off from the arrogance because
Yeah.
you'd have been insecure.
Right.
A lot of times,
Right.
man, pride and insecurity are
Security.
twins,
Yeah,
And I think, God brought you around, the block a time or two for such a time as this,
Yeah.
And so,
Yep.
dude, you're leading 450 some people, if not more.
Yeah.
Man, big things are on the horizon. You and your wife, Abby, are leading together
Yeah.
in just a few years, man. Just a few years. And I want you to think about that, man. Like, God's just getting started,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
Do immeasurably more.
Yeah.
And whether it be here or there, what that looks like, we don't need to know. We just need to be available
Right.
and ready. And Maddie and I were talking earlier of, a lot of people want to move to the next thing. You and I talked about my own life here recently. There was we had a pretty big job opportunity
Yeah.
to position in. Things were aligning. And then God just says, nope. And it's like, come
Are you
again?
sh-
What are we
sure?
going to do?
Yeah, are you sure about that?
Yeah.
But man, what God has taught us, man, is there's power in where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm about change. I love change.
Yeah.
But man, sometimes you got to keep on digging
Yeah.
and digging. And so people might see the 450 and that's amazing. That's so much growth.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been easy. You've had a fight, and so
Right.
how have you navigated being young, leading all these people, older than you, or some of them older than you? How have you been able to lead, in the capacity you have, man, but also, man, you've had to have some hard conversations with people
Yeah.
older than you. What's
Yeah.
that like?
Yeah. Just to speak to what you were talking about, I think something I'm finding out is I think people get unhappy or discontent and they think, well, I'm just going to uproot and leave.
Yeah. Mhm.
But I think probably what you guys have even discovered too is, man, it takes time for things to grow.
Yeah.
Like something I'm just learning so much about is faithfulness. Like, listen, just because you don't enjoy it doesn't mean you're not supposed to be there, right? But healthy things take time to grow. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think, for lack of a better word, winning the people over and leading well at a young age, people who are older than you, what does that look like? What have you had to do? I think that it's been full of hard conversations. And I think that's where we talk about being hip and holy. Man, when you're fully devoted to Jesus and people see that, it makes for awkward conversation.
Right.
I can remember showing up to house parties and stuff like this that people invite us over, and me and Abigail don't drink or anything like that, and maybe there's a crowd who are drinking or something, and just in that moment being like, no, like that's not a part of what we do. Like some of my close friends, understanding some of the things they're involved with, and calling them out, be like, man, do you really think this should exist in your life? And being willing, listen, you can leave. You can leave my church.
Right.
You can. I'm gonna call you out. I'm gonna sharpen you. And I think those hard conversations, and what we found is, again, upside down kingdom, right? So we think if we have hard conversations, if we sharpen each other, we're gonna hurt their feelings and they're gonna leave. But it's the exact opposite.
Exactly.
That's
Sometimes they want you to challenge them.
Yeah.
I
They want you
feel
to.
I think it's been refreshing for them to be challenged in that way. We're just saying, hey, I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to act like I don't see this. Let's talk about this. Yeah. Why is this present in your life? Right. Why does this exist? And I think what's incredible about being hip and holy and growing in that is it gives you, I can have that conversation because they know, listen, no, I'm not perfect, but I'm making every effort to live holy. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to be in my circle and if you're going to be one of my sheep, good, man. That's what I want you to do too. And that's it's kind of this, man, I think I'm a little hard-nosed when it comes to that because I'm like, listen, this isn't a joke, man. Following Jesus isn't a joke. We're not playing games. Right. Listen, if this is present in your life and you know that it shouldn't be there. I remember a conversation I had with one of the guys when he first started. Incredible growth in this guy. But we're sitting there, we're doing a pie auction at the church. And he's talking about how he wants to quit chew. So I'm like, yeah, I quit, but then I got convicted. A conversation you had with me probably 3 years earlier, whatever, probably more than 3 years. And I said, yeah, I had to stop because I got convicted. He goes, oh, I've been convicted for a long time, but I'm not going to stop. And I was like, he goes, but what I need to do is have a couple drinks and throw in a chew, and then I'll want to quit. And I looked at him and said, or you can just quit, Yeah. And in those moments, I think normally what maybe people might do is go, that's funny, and laugh it off and let's sweep it under the rug. And I didn't laugh. Right. I looked at him and I said, or you could just quit. And now this is one of my powerhouse leaders. I think he's called to be in ministry and but lots of conversations like that.
And I love that you brought that up because it's not about legalism. It's not about, dude, we're the opposite of that. Right? Some people can do this and it's fine with them. Right. But what we're getting at is, Bible defines sin as to do something that you shouldn't be doing, And
if you know something is wrong,
right? Yeah, man. Listen, I'm telling you, H&M has gotten me, a time or two. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't buy it. I bought it. You know what I'm saying? So listen, I'm calling myself out. But listen, people assume because we're young that we want to be trendy and let's just be so cool. Screw that, man. Yeah. I'm gonna write a book one day called "Screw That." Just like it's what Jesus wants, man. Like whatever Jesus wants. And I remember. Early on, read my Bible, and I smoked cigarettes since I was coming out of the womb, But I remember God speaking to me saying, "Hey, I need you to put that out." And I was like, "In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, right? There's no way." Yeah. But He said, "I need you to." Right. Dude, I took the biggest drag ever of that. And
this is my last one,
dude. I mean, I smoked it past the cotton, and straight up, and it wasn't about the cigarettes. It was just something that God asked me to surrender.
It's obedience.
Right? And so what's funny is 2 days before that, one of my friends came up and said, "Hey man, do you get convicted smoking cigarettes?" I was like, "Nah." I said, "I mean, if you do, you should stop." Yeah. No, we're not getting convicted. They were convicted, right? Then God had the audacity to convict me, right? And they're like, my friends are like, "There's no way he's going to give it up." And I did. And listen, I've sinned, I've fallen short in different areas. I'm not talking about that, legalism, but I'm saying, here's what I know. If God makes something evident in my life, needs to go, it's gone. Or I'm gonna do whatever it takes. Hey, Mark, would you hold me accountable? Yeah. Dude, it might be something stupid. I mean, I've talked to you, right? Yeah. I mean, dude, 3 things that I talked to Mark about that I've had other pastors want me to keep in check with them. Just three words, and I loved it, right? Pride, purity, and possessions, right? Man, the 3 P's, right? Yeah. And those are things. You have full access.
Right.
You ask me whatever, right? Yep. And what happens is, man, you're able to get freedom. You're able to just hold accountable. And it's been so refreshing, right? But you've got to live it out yourself. Yeah. And that's what's amazing. And dude, you're killing it, man. And when I said earlier, you've just started, bro, you've just started. Yeah. I pray to God that you're here a long time. Yeah. I know your church prays to God you're here a long time. And why not here? I mean, God can do anything. But dude, he can do immeasurably more. Yeah. And I know we talk about that a lot, but dude, he's just getting started in you, man. Yeah. And, you talk about, I'm just a couple, levels ahead. Dude, there'll be a time I know where it's like, man, I'm glad I was able to be a part of Mark's life, because that's what it's about, man. It's about, and it's about embracing people. It's about, building them up, because I also know, listen, God's he ain't done with us yet either. Right. And if sometimes I truly believe this, I could try to back it up scripturally, but I'm not going to. It's just a thought. Yeah. Sometimes I believe we rob ourselves of blessings because we won't bless others. Yeah. 100%, man. That's I could, throw out some scripture, but I just believe, like, man, if we are faithful to what God's called us to and just invest in people, man, God's going to bless us, And so, dude, what's amazing is, how much you've been blessed, God-given talent, but man, now you're doing it to other people, And dude, here's the deal. We're going to be those people wearing skinny jeans, when we're too old and, got, or we're no longer relevant, all the spitting bars, right?
Yeah.
Still. And we're going to look back at our life, and say like, what a ride. But then also we're going to look at the new generation and say, well, we invest in them, And so, man, as we end, like, what would you say? What would you conclude of these people that are watching you? And it's not just young; it could be old as well.
Yeah.
But like,
I'd like to speak specifically to young people.
Yeah,
but like,
based around that.
Yeah, what would you tell them of just like, dude,
Absolutely.
Mark, I'm young. Whether I can relate with you when you're at Highlandville, I can relate when you're at Evangel.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah. So, man, I love this question. And I'm sure you guys have felt this way too. But it's almost like, I wish I could just hand people this and they would just grab it and run with it. And I know it's harder than it sounds. But I think it's in Romans, it says, hate what is evil, cling to what is good.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And for me, my piece of advice is if you're young, I want you to understand that God's still capable of doing incredible things in you and through you. And I think this isn't a matter of salvation, but I think that what you're willing to surrender ultimately it's going to have a part to play in your empowerment, in your effectiveness. Tell me why a man who mistreats his wife can have his prayers hindered. Why are the prayers of a righteous person powerful and effective? I think of this little power beam of God's power that flows through us. And if I'm devoted to Him, right? So I'm not mistreating my wife, right? My words, my actions, again, not legalism, but I'm just submitted to Him and doing the will of the Father. That beam's gonna grow. Yeah. It's not gonna be hindered.
Right.
And a part of you guys being young and accelerating in ministry, I know you guys. I know your spiritual life. I know what it looks like behind the scenes. You've given things up, and God's put things back in your hands. As you've given Him things, He's given back to you. And what I want young people to understand is don't hold on to anything.
Good,
if it's of this world, hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Yeah. And it sounds stupid. And I know this isn't relevant and it's not hip, but again, secular music, man, and this was for me. I put it down. It was like anything. If it was gray, run from it.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't be scared to lay things down. It's going to have awkward conversations. You might lose friends. Don't be scared to be lonely. But just hate what is evil, cling to what is good.
Right.
So the things you watch, stop. Like, I know it sounds stupid, but quit with the R-rated movies.
Right.
Quit with the explicit music.
Right.
Everything that you do, I think it's Romans 12:1. It's like, the way we truly worship Him is we live a life devoted to Him. It's like what we watch, see, taste, touch,
living sacrifice.
Right.
Exactly, man. It's like lay it all down.
That's good.
So yeah,
what I love about that is because people would expect the opposite coming from you based on what you look like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
Not because of who you are, but based on what you look and your age. And then you do that, and it goes back to what you were saying. People have this projection of who you are, and then God can use you when you're young in such an amazing way. Again, He can use you at every age, but I'm just saying with this season, I think that's what God's wanting to do. And I think He wants to use you and us, man, to reach that generation.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I've been there, done that, man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I know where that life leads.
Yep.
And then, same with you. And then, Maddie and Abby's story, really kind of opposites of ours. And they have a whole nother, realm of people that they can reach out to.
Which I
based on
pray
this.
that's how my kids' spiritual life goes. Amen.
Yeah.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
But dude, it's been an honor to talk to you. And
love you guys so much.
I'm excited post quarantine. It's coming up where we can get some Chipotle, and hear what's going on. But man,
I'm ready.
We love you and appreciate you, man.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Make sure to subscribe to this channel so that these episodes are sent to you each month, along with our This Is My Story podcast that shares someone's story of transformation through Jesus.
Also, check out our midweek message and worship podcast that's released every Thursday. Thanks for hanging out with us.